Cheers and welcome to Irondale Brewing. A lot of stuff here. Motivation for this is I have two events today. One is a meeting of the North Olympic Brewers Guild where we're going to try everyone's 2024 parameter brew. It's happening at the Chimicum Granary, which is a local farm here where they grow barley and they even floor malt it themselves. So we all got a bag of about 12 pounds of that and we're asked to make beers with it. So I made an amber ale. I'll talk about that one in a future video. And then we also have a neighborhood block party potluck. So I thought I'd bring a couple of beers. But of course, all my beers are in, kegs like this or a torpedo keg that size, 5-gallon. And you could just put beer in a growler, right? But we can do better. I think our beer deserves better. Our drinkers deserve better. So we're going to do something a little bit to solve that problem. So basically, you can probably tell from the direction of things. I want to get this beer in this bigger keg into this smaller keg. And I want to do it as quietly as possible and, kind of keep the beer as still as possible while you're doing this to reduce foaming, so you don't introduce oxidation, et cetera, et cetera. And that way you can take one of these little guys to your events and have beer on tap, which is way cooler than a growler, I think. So how you do that, it's pretty basic, but I thought since I was doing this for the first time, this is another, I figure it out and explain to you as I go and cross my fingers and nothing catastrophic happens. But that's part of the fun, though, if it does. But anyway, so basically, this keg has been in my kegerator, and this is the Flash Brewing Citra Session Pale Ale, which came out great. So I thought I'd take some of that and some of that amber ale I made. And basically, this has been sitting in my kegerator at 11 psi. So I have my SodaStream canister here, and that's set to 11. So this keg is pressurized to 11. This keg has been chilled with sanitizer in it that has since been purged, and it is also pressurized to 11 psi. Some people talk about doing low PSI, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think it'll matter, but we'll see. I think the key here is you want to start with the kegs at the same pressure. See, these are both turned up to 11. Bad Spinal Tap joke there. And then basically once I attach this jumper line from the outpost of this keg to the outpost, that's key, of this keg. You never want to have beer going through the gas post. And these little kegs do have I don't know if you can see that, but a filter at the bottom of the dip tube there, so you can go nice and slow from the bottom. So basically the pressure from this keg and this keg are equal to start. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, unfortunately, the direction I did this, it didn't work out, but you can see this. I'm just going to do this pressure release valve, kind of to lower the pressure in here so then the beer will flow in that direction. You could use a spunding valve, which might be a little handier. I have one. I just didn't take the time to set it up. Or you could even use a blow-off tube. My concern with the blow-off tube is you have less control over kind of the pressure. So I figured this way, if I just kind of release the pressure as we go, it should be going nice and slow. And as the pressure equalizes, it'll kind of stop the flow, and then I can release it again a little bit. But we'll see how that goes. I've never done this before. Going to interrupt myself really quickly here. I realized as I was watching this back that I didn't explain this as clearly or simply as I could have. The thing that matters in this equation is the differential of pressure between the big keg and the small keg. So as long as you have slightly less pressure in the small keg than in the big keg, that will keep things moving nice and slowly. You just don't want a big pressure differential between the big keg and the small keg. Otherwise, the beer will flow more quickly. Say if the small keg didn't have any pressure on it at all. So, if you have, for example, if you used a spunding valve and had the big keg at 11 and you set the small one to 10, difference being 1, that will flow nice and slowly. Whereas if you had, maybe a blow-off tube or as I said, the small keg wasn't pressurized at all, then it would flow very quickly and you get a lot of foaming. Anyway, just thought I wanted to try to explain that a little bit better before we proceed. But in theory, it should work. So canister set at 11 psi. This should be 11 psi. I'm going to check. Sorry, I'm behind all this equipment yet. Well, it went up a little bit. So 11.8. I'll lower that a little bit. Okay, so now it's down to 11.1. And this should be at 11 still. So I'm going to plug this in. We'll see what happens. And again, in theory, at first, it should do nothing, relatively speaking. It may do a little something, but okay, so we got a little bit of flow. It's nice and slow. And then the pressure between everything's going to equalize. And I'm already starting to see it kind of stop. So then I'm just going to release this pressure release valve, and this may unfortunately get kind of noisy. Okay, so a little bit of more foaming than I like. Not a huge amount, but I think it'll be a little more gentle. Probably next time I do this, because I have to do this with another keg for my second beer that I'm taking some places, I probably will use the spunning valve and just set it to, if you set it to 10 or something like that, then you'll know that it's like this is just slightly lower pressure than this, and it'll go nice and slow and even. And the spunning valve would just let off pressure, obviously, as it needs to. So I'm going to go nice and slow. Yeah, like I said, a little bit more foaming than I would have hoped for, but it's not bad. It'll settle. All right, that's looking pretty good. I'm just barely pulling. You probably can't even hear it on the mic, but I'm barely pulling the pressure relief valve to let the beer flow. Occasionally you may hear a little bit of a pop, and I have to pull it off a little bit more. I may let it settle for a second here. But I'll just go over that, over the process here one more time. Start with equal pressure between the kegs. I did have, this was cold obviously because the big keg was cold because it was my kegerator. This I put in my fermentation chamber. There's those fruit flies again. Fermentation chamber full of star sand, and let it get down to 36 degrees so the temperature kind of matched. Because again, if you have everything cold when you start, I did more setup than I would have liked with them out because I had to measure the lines. But so they warmed up a little bit. But anyway, if you start cold, that helps reduce foaming quite a lot as well. Yeah, and then basically hook everything up. And then as you release pressure on here, the higher pressure will push the beer that direction. So probably obvious, but I just wanted to go over that one more time. Both for my own brain and in case you didn't follow the first time. Okay, that's going pretty well. Again, a little more foam than I would have liked, but this is the first time I've done this. I'm grabbing forgot to mention the rest of the setup. Forgive me for not being prepared here. But then how do you get the beer out of here? I'll let that settle while I talk about this. How do you get the beer out of here when you're at your event? This is a duo-tight flow control valve, I think they call it. And basically the dial up here lets you, and I think one of my very first YouTube videos was a review of this NukaTap Mini. But this is a flow control valve that you can obviously attach on there. And then the NukaTap Mini tap, sorry, I grabbed too many parts, is this little thing. So between the flow control valve and this little thing, you got beer on tap. And that flow control valve lets you, since this is a very short line, obviously, danger there is you're going to be getting a lot of foam potentially. But this flow control valve on top of this, and this hooks into there. There's other parts I won't grab at the moment. It'll be like this, but that lets you really control the output of the beer so you don't get unnecessary foaming. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. I'll release this a little bit. And the other thing I'll say is you do, and you can actually see in the line, it's kind of stopping. You do want to leave that some headspace in here because obviously when you put gas on this, you want it to be able to, work a little bit. I don't think you need a lot, but again, I'm just barely releasing that. You want to go nice and slow. And obviously you want to stop before stuff would start coming out your, well, I already said the headspace thing, but you don't want stuff coming out your PRV either. And that's nice with these kegs. You can see obviously with it, if you had a mini, stainless steel keg, be a little bit trickier. What you can do in that case is watch the condensation line. That tends to work pretty well to see where the level of the liquid is, or you could put it on a little scale and weigh also. As long as you had a frame of reference for what full meant in terms of where you wanted to stop. This is getting pretty close. And these are 2 liter, which if I remember correctly is just slightly over a gallon. So I'm not really too concerned about maxing this out. The block party is not that huge, so I think a couple of gallons of beer is going to be plenty. Plus, some people don't like beer, if you can believe it. Okay, I think I'm probably going to stop there. That looks pretty good. Not too much foam, more than I would have liked, but I think that worked pretty well. You can see nice, nice clear beer down there. It went through a filter in here and a filter in here, which hopefully didn't strip out too much of the hop character because this Citra Session Pale Ale is spot on with the Citra hops. So I'm going to stop there. Now, watch me as I figure out how best to make sure beer... Well, actually, I can just pop this off. Duh, they're closed. Sorry, I've been setting up my cannular can filler, and you take the poppets out so you don't have that dry break anymore. So I'm always a little cautious when I'm taking these off. So basically, once you're done there, pop that off. You get a little bit of drippage, hence the towels. And now we have beer in a portable keg that I can take to my event. I'm going to do one more of those for that amber ale. I wanted to do a test of this first. But yeah, that's how you transfer from one keg to another. And that's today's little demonstration. Yeah, so more videos coming up. I probably talked about a lot more strawberry beers to review, so keep tuned into the channel. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.